just wanting to look around the room for a moment and take you all in. It helps me to ground in with the co-arising experience. So I'm Susanna Marie, that's my name, and thank you for being here with me. And my topic has morphed a little bit because we're always changing, aren't we? And but it's such a great umbrella that I can kind of live into it. And it's the topic is living beyond inner division. And I was at Amoda's talk earlier, and there she is back there. And you mentioned quite a few times living beyond, or just beyond division. And it's the inner experience of feeling separate from yourself and from life falls away the more that we become self-connected. The veils get thinner and thinner over time. And my own personal experience of how that happens and happened is the falling away of the sense of being a me. The sense of self is what I call it. And the sense of self is a wonderful doorway into going beyond itself. We all have a sense of self for the most part, to variant degrees. Sometimes I think that when the ego structure is really strong inside and it's still just starting to become self-aware, it feels really strong, that sense of self. And it's not a problem on its own, because the sense of self is kind of, it's like our own koan. It helps us traverse over itself into the beyond, into that which is the unified sense of self, the one that is part of the whole. So the individual sense of self, it's just a little noisy. Yeah, it's okay. The individual sense of self is what we have to work with. Work with what you've got is my motto. I think that this is all a big science experiment. We are a science experiment, our own science experiment, and we get to see the effects immediately or over time, and we get to be honest with ourselves about those effects. So the sense of self, again, coming back to the sense of self, it thins out over time the more that we pay attention to it. It's like what Nisargadatta said, focus on the I am, if any of you are familiar with him. Stay connected to the I am. And my interpretation of that is this felt sense, because we have bodies. And for me, it's easier to enter into the felt sense of it rather than an intellectual idea, possibly. So we can go back into the body and feel into this felt sense of I am. The personal sense of self that we've had since we were little, as long as you can remember. It's a beautiful thing. It's a lovely thing. And over time, that it becomes thinner. I don't know if anyone's had that experience for yourselves. Over time, the sense of self becomes thinner right? And it relaxes. And especially if we tell ourselves the truth that it's there. And the more that we allow for it to be there and not make it a problem, and really all of this is about relaxing into allowance of not making anything, any part of ourselves a problem. Right, so our doors of perception open up to be able to allow for more and more of our experience, our personal experience. So the inner division, it falls away as we allow for more of our personal experience to be as it is and to not be in division about it, meaning that it's not supposed to be there, but allowing it to be there. And this opens our doors of perception to a greater reality, the greater reality of unified consciousness rather than individual consciousness. The sense of self can then stretch and open to contain the sense of self as a collective, not just only individual. We are sensing organisms of the divine, so the sense of self kind of limits our perception, kind of like a lens of consciousness. It kind of makes it small, like a lens in a photographic lens. And as it opens more and more, a felt sense of taking in the whole through using our bodies as the experiencer. Our bodies can actually have the capacity to be able to sense into a greater sense of self rather than just a small sense. So that felt sense of self, it starts to expand the more that we allow it to be. And we get to take in more and more of each other, take in more and more of our lives. It really is kind of like this shutter that just opens up and expands. And then the sense of self, it can contract at any time, especially when identification happens. It's like the shutter closes again. And that's okay. And then if we allow that to be, that can open up and expand again and take in more and more. And we kind of do that all day long. We take each other in, and the doors of perception are really open. And it's really, it also engages the heart when we open up. And we start to go from individual consciousness to an expanded sense of consciousness, which takes in more of the sense of the totality, going from a me to a we. And so that awareness, it can expand, and it does expand over time. And I see it actually as a maturation of consciousness. That the development of having a separate sense of self comes in when we're very little, and that it's all part of the plan. And then over time, it's a maturation occurs. And we become more actually part of the totality. We become part of, and the organism grows from being me-centered to being more awake and aware of the wholeness. And that is what I feel is happening more on a collective level. And probably what many of us in this room are really interested in is moving away from being a self-center that is mostly, centered on oneself and identified, which is painful, which is a painful thing, and growing and opening up to being centered more on the totality, which means that you become actually knowing yourself as life living itself rather than an individual living itself. That you become really awake to the fact that you are life and that you and life aren't separate. So it goes from this self-center with this felt sense that you can enter through as a tool to wake up and relax the boundaries of the body, to be able to open up to containing and understanding and knowing yourself as actually so much more, and not making that self-center, that individual sense of self wrong. And over time, even that falls away. There's actually a development going from the sense of self, personal, to unity consciousness, the sense of we, and then actually another development further than the sense of even being one with the whole. And that is just becoming pure sensing. Pure sensing. This a sensory instrument of the divine, and knowing that you are that, without actually having the self-reflection be involved. The self-reflection is kind of, it's still, you can kind of sense how much the sense of self is falling away. You know, I said this is like a science experiment. The less self-reflection, and you don't want to force this, right? This is all just being absolutely honest with ourselves along the way and telling ourselves the truth, because really it is, like Canella was saying, it's a total love affair. This is a total love affair with itself. Every step of the way is complete and beautiful upon itself. But it's kind of nice sometimes to get these, you know, little hints of, such as, and this is my paradigm, it might not be yours, but the more that self-reflection falls away, the ability to self-reflect is a wonderful tool, but it still is the subject-object relationship with itself, with life. And it happens organically. It really thins out, just like the veils of the sense of self thin out. The self-reflection, the ability to reflect on yourself, it ebbs and falls away until there's just pure experiencing that's occurring. Rather than having an experiencer and the experience, pure experience takes place. Just experiencing. So there's not a interpreter there anymore that lies in between yourself and experience. It just becomes one thing. So you can kind of sense when that gap, as that gap closes, and it's actually a movement of surrender. It's all a movement of surrender and allowance, and also the falling away of control. The controller. I see some people laughing. Oh, that one, yeah. So the controller, the one that, you know, the part of us that's holding on for dear life, right? And the mind wakes up to itself, and the heart wakes up into unity consciousness. But then there's another type of awakening, and that's of the body. And that is really fundamentally where instinctual drive lives, and where the controller really is fused in with form. So we have these different kind of types, really, of realization. It's not just one, in my opinion, in my experience, actually. And life is intelligent in how this comes about within each individual. I was just given the 5-minute warning, and I'm wondering if I want to take questions. But let me just finish that one thought. It's not like we have to do any of this, although we put our intent and our love, you know, in Nisargadatta again, he says earnestness. You put your earnestness, it's actually your love. And really, it is a development of an evolutionary development of the human. Of going from being me-identified to we-identified collectively. And then having pure experience, the divine, just without any interpretation, without any self-reflection, without, as control falls away. That's that kind of, and who knows what's final, right? Final. But that is one of the finals, at least in my experience. But you know, who knows what consciousness has in store for us. But you know, you've heard about the head, heart, and gut, maybe, awakenings. And this is the gut. The gut is the body. The body, and form fuses, you know, with the sense of me. Very young, who knows, 2 years old or something. And that too gets to fall away. And that's the no self experience, you know, when the Buddha says that there's no self. Or Ramana in a different kind of way says there's only the self. But that's where there is nothing but that, with nothing, no imagination in between. No more imagination. And that's the full surrender. And it happens so wisely and intelligently, and by the time it happens, it's pure joy. It's not a scary thing anymore to not be a center of self, but to be life itself, moving. So I have a few minutes. Who would like to? Anybody have a question? Yeah.
On your path, did you find any particular things, methods that were useful?
When I what? What was that?
On your path,
yeah.
Did you find any particular methods useful to arrive to that state?
Yeah, many.
Well, just name a few.
Okay. Devotion was one of them. I have a lot of different types of aspects to myself, the bhakti, the devotion, and also a really strong jnani, the one that came in and to inquire, and depending on what was needed when, and that's, you know, listening to the inner guidance, and learning how to listen to what's needed is so important on this path. You know, sharpening your own antenna, becoming a light unto yourself, as the Buddha would say, is so important. And so as you learn to trust your own inner voice of what's needed, like right now might be needed a good dose of surrender. You know, it's a kind of a bhakti, you know, good dose of surrender, of really just letting go into not knowing and allowing. And then at other times it's really an engagement that's called for, of really deeply looking into beliefs and to imaginations. So you know, some of us get help from teachers, and that's fine. And I also did. That was another thing on my path. I had some help from teachers, relied on myself, did a lot of surrender, stumbling around is a path. You know, there's so many aspects to it that are individual for each person that is beautifully like orchestrated, even not knowing for a while. If anything sincere, putting our sincerity to me is the most important aspect of it. Sincerely wanting what it is that you want, getting clear what it is you want, and then sincerely wanting it, and then asking inside and learning to listen for the guidance of how to achieve that, even if it includes going to see a teacher.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I have a minute left. Yeah.
You said devotion. Devotion to what?
Devotion to truth. Devotion to the most true thing that you know. The most real thing. Devotion to even maybe something that you have a sense for that you don't know yet. You know, something greater. A love affair, devotion to the love affair with truth.
I've had a devotion to trying to forget my little self, and that is hard to do.
Yeah.
So maybe I shouldn't focus on that. I should.
Maybe embrace the little self, right? Because, like I said, the sense of self is the doorway to the sense of larger self. It is. It's like we sing that personal song, right? And we let it really be there. And it's as if it was a child that we're growing up, we're maturing, leaving that smaller self behind, but we don't leave it by abandonment. You can go through it. You can go through the sense of self. Especially as it breaks down into a sense rather than something that seems like a construct. We make it so much stronger and more real and solid. But if it's a sense, then it becomes more permeable and transparent. And it breaks up into, you'll see.
So I've been aware of when that self wants to take control and sort of take the initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And when I can catch it, I say, no, let's back off and see if the invisible might have a better plan.
Mm.
And that's been working.
Good, yeah. That's the thing, is to follow sharpen that instinctual knowing of what's needed, and it can move, it can change along the way. Yeah, I think it's time. Someone else is up. Thank you.
Thank you.